Well, we would like to make an addition to the previous interview, but now concerning the possible causes of ME and treatments of patients. What would you like to say about that?
Well, yes, there is much to say about that. Concerning the cause of the chronic fatigue syndrome or the MA syndrome, there is an interesting new research and it focuses on disturbances of the immune system. And there is much to say about that, but what we've been interested of is, together with Jonas Blomberg, who is a professor in virology at the University of Uppsala. And there we have investigated some proteins in the plasma. And what he has found is that there are antibodies against a protein which is named the heat shock protein, which is a protein which you find in the mitochondria of the cell. And what he found was antibodies against this heat shock protein, which are produced by our own immune system. And these really disturb the energy process in the cell. He found that in around 30–40% of ME or chronic fatigue syndrome patients. So what you can speculate in now is that due possibly to infections, then there is an autoimmune process taking start in the body of these patients and disturbing the cell metabolism and the cell energy production.
And that makes them very tired. Could make them very tired.
Yes, yes, that is of course very interesting, as one of the main symptoms is tiredness, and that the capacity of the patients to produce energy is disturbed.
I see. And I understand also that there is a research you have made for some years, but there is also a continued research on what the patients say as brain fog with a B12 and folic acid and things. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, it's a research which has been going on for now almost 15 years. The result we have is that some patients, as you see from this slide, report improvement after they've been treated by vitamin B12 in injections. That means that we treat them with higher doses of vitamin B12 which are usually used. And the patients then say, some of the patients, not all, but some of the patients say that I feel an increased mental alertness. And they also say that this effect of the vitamins will appear rather a short time after I've had the injections. Perhaps not the same day, but the next day they feel better. And this brain fog, which they complain of, is reduced a little at least. They don't, of course, get healthy, but they say that the mental alertness, which I feel is very welcome. And they also say that this comes rather soon. And cobalamin thus may not have only a vitamin effect, it could also have some pharmacological effect. What we think the theories we have to explain this improvement is that possibly there is a reduced transport of vitamin B12 into the brain, inside the blood-brain barrier, and I'll show you some slides here about this, and that's vitamin B12 and folic acid. They collaborate very intimate in the methylation of homocysteine. Homocysteine is a product which is produced in the metabolism, and it should be metabolized by the help of vitamin B12 and folic acid, and transformed into a degraded product, because homocysteine is toxic in itself. And what we then did was that we took a spinal tap from patients with chronic fatigue syndrome, and we could then show, this is an old picture, and I don't know how much you can see of this, but we could then show that of 12 patients, 10 had too low levels of vitamin B12 in the liquor space. And there was, in fact, one who had a very pathological low level of vitamin B12. Still more interesting was that these patients, when we measured homocysteine, which is the metabolite of this process, then we could show that the chronic fatigue patients had increased levels of this homocysteine. And homocysteine is a toxic product if it is there in a too high concentration. And as you see from this slide to the left, there are 11 patients with homocysteine levels in the cerebrospinal fluid, while the other two groups are two different control groups. On the next slide, where we have parted those who improved, the 3 who improved very much, 2 who improved much, and 1 who improved a little, and 2 who we regarded as non-responders with a question mark, and 3 who didn't respond at all. When we afterwards investigated the gene expression for the MTFHR gene, then those who had a mutation on this gene were those who did not respond. That was made blind. The way we think about this vitamin B12 treatment and the response to this vitamin treatment is that possibly the transport of at least vitamin B12 is disturbed in these patients. And then we think that possibly there are an autoimmune reaction against these protein molecules.
As I understand, you are now a consultant to a study at the Open Medicine Institute in California, which Linda Tannenbaum has raised money. They have got the money now to make the study.
Yes.
And you will help them in that process, is it so?
Yeah, it's so. It's very interesting, and I really look forward to the results. What she does is to collect money for a double-blind study where patients with chronic fatigue syndrome should get either active vitamin B12 and folic acid treatment or placebo, and then to study whether there is a significant effect of the vitamin substitution. That very interesting, yes.
Thank you.